Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of the View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Just when the media circus couldn't get any louder, everything explodes. Sunny Hostin is suddenly in the hot seat, and this time the spotlight is unforgiving. A staggering $450 million legal storm is looming. Greg Gutfeld is already lining up the punchlines. Tyrus isn't even pretending to hide the side eye. On the surface, everyone's acting like it's just another day on TV, but behind the scenes, the tension is real. So what actually set this off? Who tipped the first domino? And why do the lawyers look a little too pleased? Stay with us, because this story unravels fast, takes some unexpected turns, and ends in a way no one saw coming.
Only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Before we move on, smash that like button and subscribe, because you know you don't want to miss this. The second that number hit the air, everything else faded into static. A figure that big doesn't just show up, it crashes through the room and takes over. A $450 million legal reckoning has a way of instantly resetting priorities, wiping the smiles off faces, and exposing just how fragile public confidence really is.
Or man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day, that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
Almost overnight, Sunny Hostin's carefully constructed aura of moral certainty stopped looking like a fortress and started looking like a glass house, conveniently positioned in the middle of an incoming hailstorm. And this was never going to unfold quietly or delicately, because nothing involving that much money ever does. Then came the framing, the guilt narrative, the explanation about being a successful black woman surrounded by white people, followed by a sudden pivot that made even seasoned viewers blink. Yes, that angle. The successful slave-owning black woman lineage. Get it straight, her ancestors owned slaves. From there, the posture hardened.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
The message shifted toward "I'm still a target of oppression," as if that positioning were necessary just to remain credentialed at the same level as other black voices in the conversation. Greg Gutfeld wasn't buying a second of it. He accused her of lying outright. And when Greg and Tyrus reacted, it wasn't subtle. It landed like a marching band detonating inside a meditation retreat. Loud, unignorable. But what made the whole spectacle impossible to look away from wasn't just the staggering legal mess. It was what it exposed underneath. For years, Sunny Hostin cast herself as the adult in the room, the legal mind with the steady hand, slicing through arguments with calm authority and moral certainty. But fallout on this scale doesn't respect television personas or carefully polished monologues. It turns everyone into an unwilling student in the classroom of consequences, and attendance is mandatory. Greg Gutfeld, never one to waste a moment of irony, treated the situation like an early delivery straight from the comedy gods. Watching a legal expert stumble into a legal nightmare is the kind of poetic symmetry writers dream about. The commentary didn't need reenactments or dramatic quotes. The situation spoke for itself.
Makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
Tyrus came at it differently. His energy wasn't about punchlines. It was about warning labels. He read the moment less as a legal debate and more as a cautionary tale unfolding in real time. The tone was unmistakable. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't random. And that sign everyone ignored, it was there for a reason. The mix of Tyrus's blunt, forced delivery and Greg Gutfeld's razor-edge sarcasm transformed the segment into something far more brutal than a debate. It felt like a public autopsy of credibility, each layer peeled back, exposing another uncomfortable question about how someone so certain, so assured, ended up exactly here. And the real humor didn't come from mockery alone. It came from watching certainty evaporate in real time. Sunny Hostin's brand has long rested on the idea that she knows better, that she spots the legal angles others miss, that her judgments come from expertise, not impulse. This wasn't about cutting a check or smoothing over a dispute. It was about the collapse of the illusion that some people are exempt from the same scrutiny they enthusiastically apply to everyone else. The commentary made one thing painfully clear. Moral high ground turns into quicksand the moment legal reality steps in, and confidence without caution can become a very expensive hobby.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead,
the shift between jokes and analysis felt effortless because the story itself set the pace. The laughter wasn't cheap or random. It came from an uncomfortable truth public figures tend to forget. The rules still apply, even to the people who've spent years explaining them to everyone else. What made the segment compelling was its refusal to play as a simple gotcha. Instead, it unfolded like a slow, unavoidable realization that the standards someone enforces have a habit of circling back. Sunny's past confidence became the perfect backdrop, turning the moment almost theatrical by contrast. Watching someone who once spoke with absolute certainty, now tied to a legal disaster of this scale, created exactly the kind of tension comedy feeds on, and both commentators leaned into that tension with deliberate precision.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
As the conversation unfolded, the focus shifted to a deeper point. Expertise isn't a shield, it's a responsibility, and that responsibility only grows heavier when millions of dollars are on the line. The jokes landed because they were tethered to that truth, not tossed out for easy laughs. Every sarcastic beat circled back to the same central irony, that the person most closely associated with legal clarity was now being defined by legal uncertainty. The transitions felt seamless because each moment built on the last, shaping a narrative rather than a scattershot roast. The story moved deliberately from shock to irony to reflection, and even without spelling it out, the reason this kind of moment grips people was obvious. It taps into a universal fascination with reversals of fortune, not cruelty, curiosity, the uneasy pull of watching confidence collide with consequence, and seeing how carefully constructed narratives begin to unravel. The $450 million figure hovered over everything like a silent punchline, never needing repetition because its sheer presence kept the stakes unmistakably clear.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm going to go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what, like, they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
As the segment moved forward, the lens widened to take in the broader media ecosystem, one that rewards absolute certainty and quietly punishes doubt. Sunny Hostin's predicament became a living case study in what happens when that ecosystem runs headfirst into reality. As the implications sharpened, so did the humor. Greg Gutfeld's barbs underscored how quickly applause fades when legal filings replace talking points, while Tyrus drove home a simpler truth. Reality doesn't negotiate with reputation. What made the commentary effective was its restraint. It didn't need exaggeration. The facts were already doing that work. The situation was dramatic by nature, and the humor merely clarified it, giving the moment shape and weight. The laughter wasn't rooted in cruelty, but in recognition. Everyone has seen this pattern before. Confidence rewarded, consequences delayed, and then reality arriving all at once, even if the dollar amounts are usually far smaller. As the segment pushed further into analysis, the tone stayed light enough to entertain, but sharp enough to land. Gutfeld's humor worked like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Precise cuts that sliced through pretension without wasting motion. Tyrus anchored the conversation in plain reality, underscoring a simple truth. No amount of on-air confidence overrides legal facts. The irony deepened with every observation, reinforcing the core theme that expertise is not immunity. Sunny's past certainty lingered in the background like an echo, never quoted, never needed, adding weight to the contrast unfolding on screen.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
Each transition felt intentional, pulling viewers through a narrative that balanced entertainment with revelation. And throughout it all, the $450 million figure stayed fixed at the center, an immovable anchor that grounded every joke and insight in unmistakable stakes. As the segment moved toward its conclusion, the emphasis shifted from pure humor to reflection. The jokes eased back just enough to make space for a broader takeaway. Public figures ignore the limits of their platforms at their own risk. Gutfeld and Tyrus never positioned themselves as moral authorities. Instead, they played the role of observers, watching a carefully crafted image collide with inconvenient reality, which kept the discussion grounded and relatable. In its final moments, the conversation widened to question media credibility itself, hinting that audiences are growing weary of voices that project absolute certainty. Sunny's situation became a clear illustration of why that skepticism is taking hold, with the humor reinforcing the message rather than overpowering it. The transition stayed fluid, letting the segment wind down naturally, ending not in outrage, but with the quiet reminder that reality has a habit of cutting through even the most confident narratives.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
The lasting impression was not one of cruelty, but of clarity, a moment where commentary exposed a truth that extends well beyond a single incident. When certainty becomes a performance instead of a responsibility, the collapse can be dramatic. Gutfeld and Tyrus didn't need to amplify that collapse. It spoke loudly on its own, and their humor simply reflected it back to the audience. What kept the story engaging was the way it wove scale, irony, and personality into a single coherent thread. The transitions guided viewers smoothly from surprise to laughter to reflection, creating a flow that felt intentional rather than chaotic. Over time, the $450 million figure receded from a hard number into a symbol, standing in for the price of forgetting that true expertise requires humility. When the moment passed, what remained was a narrative that managed to be both entertaining and instructive, layered with sarcasm, sharpened by wit, and grounded in the unavoidable reality of consequences. As the discussion settled into its aftermath, the wider cultural implications became impossible to overlook. Moments like this rarely stand alone, especially when they involve figures figures whose public identities are built on certainty and moral authority. The legal fallout did more than challenge Sunny Hostin's professional standing. It quietly called into question the broader culture of performance-driven confidence that dominates televised commentary. Gutfeld and Tyrus framed the situation not as a sudden scandal, but as an almost inevitable outcome, the natural result of commentary drifting away from restraint and towards self-assured theater.
She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
The humor continued to resonate because it avoided personal cruelty, focusing instead on the ideas, contradictions, and assumptions that made the moment so revealing. There was a near-academic fascination in watching how quickly a narrative can reverse when opinion gives way to documentation. The $450 million figure lingered unresolved, suspended like a reminder that consequences don't follow broadcast schedules. As that realization took hold, Gutfeld's sarcasm sharpened, underscoring the sense that this was not a passing controversy, but a lasting reckoning, one that would persist regardless of panel slots or rhetorical finesse. Tyrus brought added gravity to the exchange by anchoring the discussion in plain, everyday logic, reminding viewers that no amount of on-air authority can override basic accountability. His take underscored a growing fatigue among audiences with lectures delivered from elevated platforms, especially when those platforms collapse under closer scrutiny. While the humor never disappeared, it gradually took on a more reflective edge, nudging viewers to think about why such reversals feel both startling and oddly predictable. As the segment unfolded, the focus subtly turned toward the audience itself, acknowledging the role viewers play in rewarding certainty over nuance. Sunny's situation became a kind of mirror, reflecting not only individual errors, but a broader media culture that often prizes confidence above caution, reinforcing the sense that this was less a single moment of embarrassment and more a wider commentary on credibility and consequence.
Anna went in a different direction, but I love the fact that, you know, Manny is younger and he's
How
very...
much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he?
Like a month or a year or 10 years? Or
5
what?
years.
It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think.
Oh, no.
I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He
Exactly.
throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy stuff.
Gutfeld's sharp wit kept the energy moving, while Tyrus's grounded presence prevented the conversation from drifting into the abstract. By the final stretch, the tone had settled into an easy balance of humor and realism, with an unspoken acknowledgement that the consequences would outlast the punchlines. The $450 million figure, initially shocking, came to feel more like a symbol of excess, an emblem of what happens when authority is treated as permanent rather than something that must be continually earned. The takeaway emerged without needing to be spelled out, because the story carried its own message more effectively than any sermon could. When public figures mistake performance for permanence, reality tends to intervene with unmistakable force. Gutfeld and Tyrus didn't manufacture that drama, they simply let it play out, offering a lesson sharpened by sarcasm and delivered with precision. The story lingered because it felt unresolved, a reminder that accountability rarely arrives in a single moment, but unfolds slowly, deliberately, and without regard for reputation or comfort.